Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Poole-Heller, and thanks for joining us. I'm really excited today. We have Chris Hibbard with us. She's a wonderful gem and resource we have here in Boulder, Colorado, and almost a neighbor of mine. I live in Louisville next door. And she's a clinical psychologist, an educator, a psychophysiologist. Her list of credentials goes on, and I will tell you some of the highlights, but there's way more. So make sure you go to her website at chrishibbard.com. And that's Christine Hibbard, CHRISTINE, HIBBARD.com. And you can connect with all of the wonderful things she's done. But I want to really highlight her book, The Heart of Healing, From Trauma to Health and Happiness. So that's a wonderful book that you can order on Amazon or through her publisher, and it's a great resource. Chris has done just about everything under the sun related to psychology and healing and serving people around the globe. She's the director of the Boulder Integral Stress Management Clinic since 1982. She's an ordained interfaith minister. She spent the last 20 years teaching and working with post-war trauma in Kosovo, Israel, Syria, and Uganda. She's a recipient of the United Nations Award for Human Rights in this work, and she also has the U.S. Congressional Recognition Award for her excellence in international community service. So my goodness, she has a master's in science education. It goes on and on. Trust me, you got to go to the website and get it all. So, but today I'm really excited to talk to Chris because she's been working with patients during the pandemic, as many of you have been, but she's been working with some people that have had some pretty serious symptoms, and I'd like to talk to her about what she's finding in her clinical experience and what she's learning as she goes, because it's an unusual situation. We're in the pandemic along with all of our clients that are in the pandemic globally, and everybody's kind of in the same boat, but we're trying to be as helpful as possible. So welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. It's a beautiful day here in Boulder, Colorado.
Wonderful. And you have a really nice spot next to the foothills, so near the mountains. So do you want to say a little bit about some of your clinical experiences with people that have had a more serious condition with COVID? I know a lot of therapists are working with people that are isolated and feeling lonely or too much togetherness or family issues, but I'm wondering how it's been to be in the front lines with some serious cases.
Yes, well, I've had two people, and of course I'm changing description a little bit to keep the privacy and confidence of my clients. But one of them I started to see 4 weeks ago, and this person is 62. We've been doing Zoom sessions, and that's not that easy to work with people who have been under this incredible stress that comes along with this virus. But she got this virus working. She thinks someone at work was very, very sick, and she got sick. And she went home, and that was about a month ago. And she got tested and was sent home because she had mild symptoms. Mm-hmm. But the interesting piece about this is that her husband was there. They separated, and he went downstairs. She was upstairs. Mm. But he was the one who was going to be taking care of her at home when she's going through these symptoms, and they were, pretty tough in her age bracket. So chest issues, pain, having trouble to breathe, but again, it was milder, so she could go home, and she felt really good about that.
Right. She'd have to be isolated, and
exactly.
He could be with her, and yeah.
Yeah, and so I felt really privileged to work with her, and it wasn't that easy. We were.
Was she dealing with a lot of anxiety or stress or depression?
Yes, and I find, Diane, a lot of meaning and joy in my work, even though my heart breaks with what she was going through and what we're all going through with this isolation and physical distancing that's happening. we're going through this. Who was it? It was Joseph Campbell who said he was a wonderful mythologist. I think
I
you're
know.
familiar with him.
Amazing.
Yeah. And he said, collectively, this is how did he word it? A dangerous night sea journey that we're all going on. And she certainly was feeling that. We're in this, she was feeling the liminal time that we're in between and not knowing where we're going. So I started working with her on just calming down her body. Her emotional issues were her fear of dying, her fear of her husband getting sick, her
Right.
fear of
There's so many threats happening at once, so
well,
many possibilities.
all at once. I mean, she had huge anxiety and
What?
PTSD just from going in and getting tested. And then she felt relief at being able to go home and not be
Yes.
hospitalized.
Right. Right.
So that was very fortunate for her. But we were dealing with a lot of frustration. She had fear of her friends isolating her, and
Like people not wanting to be with her because she had the.
yes, like that they were contagious, or she was contagious even if they dropped off food.
Right. Right.
This is what people are going through. It's
Yeah.
like going into a grocery store and you feel like there's virus everywhere.
Right.
So
Right.
I worked very gently with her to begin with this isolation she was doing and the grief she was feeling with all of this. So, I used many, many different interventions, and I'm using them very well with other clients just who are isolated and fearful about
Mm-hmm.
what's going on.
Are there any interventions you feel are particularly effective right now?
Yes. I first of all started to work with bringing her body into a healing process. And without doing that to begin with, it's just doesn't seem to work. At least that's my experience. So her nervous system needed to calm down, needed to get to a place of equilibrium, and greater sense of connection, safety, calmness. So I started to work with the fear that dominates her, our survival brain, and moving it into a safety brain,
Mm-hmm.
to put it simply.
So you're
And
working to regulate the nervous system by resourcing her or having her shift
exactly.
focus? Uh-huh.
Yes, yes. And she understood this. This was what she could understand what was happening, and she began to experience a more open, more resilient place in her system. But to get there, I had to use the typical psychophysiological work with the sympathetic nervous system and moving into the parasympathetic nervous system to just calm things down. And she worked with that very well. I used visualization. I used breath work, quieting response, autogenic training. She took to that very, very well.
Can you just give the people watching a little bit of an example?
Well, essentially, it's going into your body and you actually become your own medicine. It's very powerful and simple in a way. If you visualize your arms and your hands, your peripheral areas,
Okay.
and your
Arms and
head,
hands. Yeah.
feeling warmth. However it is you visualize that.
We could take people through that experience if you'd like.
Yes, and it's lovely. My arms and hands feel heavy and warm. warmth is flowing into my body. So bringing the different parts of the body where you actually begin to feel them, and it begins to calm down the rapid heart, the breathing, all the physiology that shifts us out of a place of equilibrium. And so she really loved our autogenic training, and my other patients really liked that too.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was energy medicine, a meditation that I made, that I created, that takes one through the general stresses and then the specific stresses, and they will repeat things after me and go through that meditation with me. And that seems to work really, really well, because I set it up so that they experience gently the trauma they're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
then move them to a place that's more uplifting and where they can actually use their own positive thinking patterns. And when they repeat those, we're setting down new neural pathways within the brain. So that works very well. And then just general things for energy medicine, like humming. Humming now we have a lot of data on that, where it calms down the vagal nerves.
Right,
And,
right.
yeah, and humming is great.
Hum while you do the dishes, hum while you make dinner, hum while you're walking around the house, humming if you're in bed.
Exactly,
Recovering.
exactly. And you choose the song that you want, that you like.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed with this client that she chose one from her childhood. And I really loved that, because on Zoom, it's not that easy to really get into the PTSD and the trauma with people the way I can in person.
Mm-hmm.
But if she chooses one from a wonderful experience as a child, then she's got a resource there.
Right. Automatically. And
automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had fun. There were times when I got her to actually laugh and experience and move from a terrible experience, that she had and was
Mm-hmm.
still having within her home.
Right.
And
well, we know when you get to humor, you're in the ventral vagal, so
yeah,
you're in the social engagement part of the brain. So that's
right.
a win for sure. And sometimes, I mean, that's important to communicate to those listening, that sometimes there can be appropriately light and funny moments, even in the midst of really dark times. You're laughing with, you're able to access that kind of perspective that allows that part of your brain to open up and be on board, which is really, really helpful. You make better decisions, you have more cognitive functioning, you're more interested in connection, there's all sorts of benefits, and you're more present to yourself. So all of those things are a big win.
Well, it was a big win for her. In one area particularly, because I've been doing couples therapy for 40 years. I love doing that. And she was having issues with her husband, of course, and he was trying his best. But things would come up, like she said, he doesn't even know where the towels are, and things like that, which was very frustrating to her. And she was angry, and she'd go into that fast breathing where you can hardly breathe. And so I was using humor with her, like, well, I've been married for 40 years and raised 3 children, and my husband, doesn't know where the cookbooks are, and we'd start laughing.
Right.
I would make gentle fun of myself and my husband, and that helped a lot.
To kind of join in that experience.
Yeah. And then I could move into more of the trauma work with somatic experiencing.
Great.
And this is, of course, where we track sensations in the body. And all of the work previously, she was getting a sense of her body, and her nervous system was calming down. And I moved her into what kind of meaning is she putting on these body sensations?
Mm-hmm.
And it was delicate at first, but she began to really move into that knowing, like the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy that works with negative behavioral patterns, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And she began to notice those, and she started noticing her husbands too in a much better light. And then of course I had to move her into resources in order to handle the body sensations and the trauma that was coming up. And if she didn't have her own resources, I'd, move her into a place, someone that she trusted, that
Right.
she had, and she really did trust her doctor.
Oh, thank goodness. That's a huge one.
Yeah. So that was really good. And she's like, oh, okay, I can use my doctor, as a resource. And
because he's an authority figure and he's a guide through illness, and he represents all sorts of healing. So that's a perfect, thank God that she feels so comfortable with him, and she has you. So she's got two really great people on her team and a very well-intentioned husband. So that's all very, very helpful.
Right. So that was very, very helpful. And this helped to bring about a sense of safety again within her body that was deeper, and in her mind of, okay, I'm feeling a lot more safe. I use imagery with that process again, and movement to move, get her to
so
move
she's
around.
up and around enough that she's not just in bed the whole time. Now she is.
Now she can.
So she can use movement. Good.
Yeah. And, it wasn't the kind of movement that was strenuous in any way.
Right.
But it really helped. Like
good.
taking with the trauma, that helps to release trauma in the body. And then emotional work, more emotional, and then just going to that better cognitive understanding. And that really helped her.
So having clear information and understanding what's true, what's not true, what you know, what you don't know.
Exactly. And she had a lot of, she was, she noticed, I'm making up a lot of this.
Catastrophizing, you mean, like making it a little worse than it actually is? I think there's such an invitation to do that, especially if you pay attention to the media too much, because it just on and on and on. And I think it's really easy for the mind to start thinking. I mean, it's funny. I was at the dentist yesterday. I unfortunately have to get 2 root canals this week. It was a weird time to do that. But they had a beautiful picture of a hummingbird with like a round red flower that it was sucking nectar out of. And as soon as I saw the round red flower, I thought of the coronavirus. I mean, it turned into the coronavirus. But just because it's just weird how our associations are shifting. And I said that to the dental team, and they thought that, oh my God, yeah, that's amazing. But they could see it right away once I pointed it out. And I said, it's just that the mind is so associating, and it's showing up in dreams for people and for me too. And it's an interesting how, and it used to be that you'd see somebody with a mask on, you think they were going to rob the grocery store, and that used to represent danger. But now having a mask on represents safety, and not having a mask on represents danger. So it's just interesting to see our associations shift as we go through the pandemic together.
But I think, Diane, you're making a really good point about like news. I had to work with her on, the husband hooked up a TV in her room, and he was very interested in sitting with her and watching the news. And I had to suggest that she really not do that, because I could see the hypervigilance was coming up. More.
It makes you focus on it even more than we're already focusing on it, which is a lot. So, having to do all these practices, which are good for us, but it's it keeps you constantly, I've got to wipe the surface. I have to wash my hands. Oh, I have to wipe off the knobs. Oh, I have to put a mask on if I go out. You know, there's all, you're thinking about it a lot just with what we already have going on. And then to be listening to media. I've been suggesting people use media to kind of prime regulation or prime secure attachment by watching shows that, you know, might have problems come up in the family, but they work them out. Like Parenthood was one a long time ago. And things like This Is Us, or the movie Lion, or the movie Brooklyn, or just anything that is calming to you, to make sure you're even using your entertainment not in a way that's activating. Because right now we don't need more activation, most of us.
Yes. And those funny movies that we can go back
laugh.
to.
Yeah.
Like my husband and I watched Clueless.
Great.
You know, that's an old movie, and that's pretty funny. And, you know, it's like we're all clueless, really, in a way, of where this is going and how it's going to turn out. However, I think we've learned a lot along the way already. At least that's what my clients are beginning to feel.
What kinds of things do you feel are becoming positive learnings, or learnings at all, out of this situation for people you're working with?
Yeah, well,
anything?
Yes, just that the creativity that we've had to learn, that and the distinction between social distancing doesn't, you know, it's physical distancing.
Right.
We
That's
really
a better
want to have, and it doesn't mean we can't have connection with people. So to become more creative with connection, but at the same time, people valuing interaction, where you can actually begin to see and be with someone 10 feet apart, say, out walking in nature. And feeling grateful for the small pleasures in life.
Yeah.
That's coming up for me a lot. And then the quieting down, the not rushing and not being out so much, and the sense of the air clearing up everywhere.
Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, how clear everything is.
Wildlife coming back, of being able to focus contemplatively on nature when you're out, and noticing a deeper awareness within ourselves.
Yeah. Back to our roots, literally, with the ground and nature, and appreciating the birds are singing and the flowers are coming up in spring, even though we're dealing with this pandemic. All that's still happily functioning.
Yes. And just yesterday, there was a mountain lion in our yard.
Wow. Oh, wow. I hope you got pictures. That's amazing.
No, I mean, I'm one of, I want to be there with the experience.
Right. You don't want to be grabbing a camera. Right. That's great. Well, so is there anything else I think those are really good takeaways that I think people are really appreciating, and hopefully being able to feel what they're grateful for and the blessings we have in the midst of all the really big challenges. And I know, is there anything else that you feel like you did working with her to help her with fear and anxiety clinically that you'd like to share, or lead us through an experience, or anything that you'd like to do to help people understand how you're supporting her or him? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing, Diane, is, and this is for therapists and for all of us, is taking the time to develop a tolerance for disturbing sensations in our body. And I work with people on that it's so important to move through these challenges with building up a sense of tolerance. And we're going to need this for long-term issues that, you know, we're in this for a while. So this tolerance that we could build up, and then challenges in learning that there is safety that comes with that. When I was in the post-war zones, one of the issues that would come up for me, you know, looking back to that time, was that even though I was appalled at how awful the stories that the refugees were telling, I had to have a sense of openness and wellness and use the skills that I had in a way that was gonna help them, even though I was feeling the sense of frustration and rage at what they were going through.
Right.
And that sense that we can develop in ourselves of, okay, I can go to a higher place and I can feel that sense of calm energy that's always present and available to us if we tune into it.
Right.
And of course, that would go along, that brings up people's spiritual practices, whatever it is that they use to calm themselves, and the breath work to keep breathing, to feel connected to our loved ones, to feel those small pleasures, and to just bring up past small pleasures if we're not feeling them right now.
Right.
And to melt into those. When I do that, I just feel really good. And it is a long-term strategy that is there instantly. Without having to remember all the other skills that I went through and that I listed for you in this discussion.
Right.
So, but we've got grief challenges coming up, and
Yes.
I'm working with that woman with that. But the other woman that I just started working with is older, and she was hospitalized and on a ventilator and intubated.
Wow. Well, that's really serious.
And that is serious. I mean,
that's life-threatening. You're close.
I had to shift into what I was saying, the skills that I had to use overseas with that kind of trauma. Being in the wards, isolated, alone, not having friends or family there with her. She lives alone. That's another thing that, I'm going to have to bring skills to. She's got people next door helping her when she comes home. But I just started to work with her with
Are you working with her while she's in the hospital?
FaceTime, and now she's going to be coming home.
I see. Okay.
So it was interesting because she still has that PTSD from being in the hospital.
And being intubated, I'm sure everybody knows what that means, but it's when they have the tube down your throat and they're
yes.
kind of, it's really
of course,
invasive.
They gave her drugs,
right,
to help. But still, it's a terrible thing. And then you have people with you in the ICU who are on ventilators and all of the trauma going on.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. I feel privileged to work with her and to just be there for her, because this is a considerable trauma, and she will be coming home, and we set up people to be there for her in place, and all the resources that she needs. And so we'll see what happens.
Well, how was that working on FaceTime? Were you mostly just focusing on really being present and bearing witness to what she was going through and holding a container for whatever came up for her? I mean, if she was intubated, could she talk to you? I mean, she couldn't really.
She had been intubated.
Oh, so that was Pat.
Yes.
Obviously, she can't do it when she's intubated. So she'd already been through that, which is kind of a pretty. Did she do any boundary work about it, or do you think that'll come later in the treatment? Because I was intubated in the hospital last time I was in, so I know the feeling.
So
not a fun thing. Not a fun.
thing. Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine. What she's going through.
Because I even remember the sensation of it coming out, the feeling of it coming up and out. So it's different things come back for different people, but then it kind of felt over, like as I got the sensation of that, it felt like I was on the other side. But I think you get stuck, a little bit, because we dissociate when it's really bad. We can gap out there and then it doesn't get metabolized. Not that you have to do every piece of it, obviously, but Yeah,
Right.
I'm glad she's on the other side of that. That's really good, and that she's on her way home.
Yeah, but oh, I could feel the secondary trauma coming up in me as I just
Sure.
listened,
Yeah.
just listened.
Well,
And
because we're,
my,
we are in this really bizarre situation where most of us as therapists have done a lot of personal work on different things, our own histories and stuff. So even if
yes,
something similar to our history comes up, we usually have worked most of it through. And if some a little bit comes up, we might get some supervision or do a session ourselves somewhere, get
yes,
help with it. But this is like happening we're in the same soup with everybody else with the pandemic. So, and it's an unusual situation for all caregivers, medical or psychological, to manage all their own experience, as well as they're trying to really be the steady person and the present person and the embodied person while they're listening to stories that could actually affect them very personally, and you don't know.
that's right. It's so true. So again, I feel it's a real privilege to be working with her, and it's like when I was in the field overseas, I need to really move to those higher skills
Yeah.
when I am sensing the trauma that she was going through, and I think about the all of the people who have been in particular in New York and the bigger cities where this has been a desperate situation.
Yeah.
This client of mine, you know, there weren't that many people on the floor, the ICU with her, and it wasn't as
Densely populated, or
traumatic,
yeah.
yeah, as some of the thousands have been going through. So she knows that and feels that she's lucky, and is
Right.
grateful for it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing to work with, to get up to the point where um, we end with, okay, how can I feel grateful, every day
Hmm.
of for my life and what I have and what's given to me now, and being able to move to a better place of safety within myself and actually in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because I think you're speaking to a lot of concerns that therapists have for their own, when we start to take on the
Yes.
secondary trauma that can easily happen.
Yeah.
And, that you're saying some things that could really help mitigate that. Is there any other self-care or self-compassion kinds of things that you feel are really important to stress to therapists, or anybody who's in a caregiving position, like this woman's husband's trying to take care of her at home,
Yeah.
and she's having to guide him a lot, apparently?
Yes. Well, again, it's calming our own nervous systems down. It's bringing our bodies into homeostasis, into an equilibrium before we go into a session
Hmm.
with anybody, and where I feel a sense of gratefulness, and I can feel a sense of peace, and I'm going to do the best I can in terms of boundaries when I need them, so that I don't go into that secondary
Right.
trauma.
Right. You know
And
your own limits, right? And you
yes,
protect yourself. Yeah.
yes, because this is a global thing that we're all aware of now. It's in the unconscious field, and collectively, it's like Joseph Campbell was saying, this a dangerous night sea journey. It doesn't mean that I'm not in it or that you're not in it.
Right.
We all are in it, and it's how skillfully can we move with that in the background, that natural anxiety that tends to be there
Right.
on a daily basis. It's not like we can absolutely close ourselves down from the news. We have to know what's happening and when we can
Right.
go
You got to
out.
check in at least
Yeah,
once a day, right? But not
yeah,
watch it maybe all day. Right.
exactly. When
Right.
can I go to the grocery store with my mask on, and what times would be better for me? And
Hmm.
they're just the natural things for moving more into a new life, with new skills and new resilience.
Right.
Hopefully we can get to that place.
Well, you have such a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you sharing it, because you're coming as an interfaith minister and psychophysiologist and an educator and also a psychologist, and you have a degree in science. I mean, that you're bringing so much to the work you're doing with people. So I'm really glad you could take some time to share some of your experiences and some of their experiences. And I'm sure they're feeling very lucky to have you in their lives right now as well. So, and I think that speaks to many therapists out there that are making space for a lot of people that are trying to navigate through this strange time, whether it's family issues or relationship issues or their personal health and well-being, or guilt or grief from maybe having been part of infecting someone, or the grief of losing someone, or losing jobs. I mean, there's so many almost like octopus kinds of issues that come out of something that's serious, and especially when it's affecting everybody in the world at the same time.
Yes. Well, it's been a real pleasure to be with you today.
Well, good. Well, thanks for joining us. I just want to remind you, you can connect with ChristineHibbard.com if you want more information. And also, of course, everybody's working on Zoom these days, Chris as well. And her book, The Heart of Healing from Trauma to Health and Harmony, is a wonderful resource as well. So thanks, everybody, and stay safe and be well and take good care.
Oh,
Bye.
Thank you. You too.
Bye for now. Bye.